Welcome to the rising demand for cooling in data centers, Bitcoin mines, and AI servers. In this digital age, data is everything. From streaming our favorite shows to powering artificial intelligence, massive amounts of information are being processed every second. But behind the scenes, there's a hidden challenge: cooling these massive heat-producing technologies. Take Bitcoin mining, for example. These machines work non-stop, solving complex equations to verify transactions. This process generates intense heat, and without proper cooling, hardware performance suffers, or worse, systems shut down entirely. Then there's AI servers. Training artificial intelligence models demands immense computing power. The more advanced the AI, the hotter these machines get. Keeping them cool isn't just about efficiency, it's about preventing costly downtime. So, how do we cool these high-tech powerhouses? Traditional air cooling is still common, but modern facilities are turning to liquid cooling, immersion cooling, and even waste heat recovery systems to improve efficiency. With global temperatures rising and energy costs surging, the industry is under pressure to develop greener, more efficient cooling solutions. The future of digital infrastructure depends on it. As technology evolves, so does the need for smarter cooling. The question is, how will we keep up, and who will work on it?
All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining us once again on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC show. Now, today's episode is going to be a little bit different than most of our episodes. We're actually out on the road. Tom and I have been out exploring things that are changing in our industry. Remember, the entire goal of Did You Know is to keep the industry educated on things that are changing for technologies and refrigerants, and making sure that you as an instructor have all the tools you need to be successful. So this voyage is a little bit different. Let us know in the chat. I did an audio test a while ago and I got a message that was coming back, not quite the highest of quality. So if someone lets me know in the chat how things are going, that'll help us correct if I need to change microphones or not. So we had to do things a little bit early today. We've been out exploring another equipment manufacturer, looking at what is evolving in our industry. We regularly talk about the changes in technology and the changes of refrigerants and how it's impacting residential and light commercial. We don't always talk about the entire industrial aspect. Now, if you remember, earlier in the years, a little bit, it was actually 2024, we spent some time going to the Johnson Controls facility in Norman, Oklahoma, to look at transitions that were happening there. We've been invited down to the Danfoss Turbo Core factory to look at transitions they made in technology and refrigerants. And then we earlier spent time at the Johnson Controls JADEC facility to see what's happening in the chiller world. And for many of us, chillers sound is muffled. Let me try a different microphone, and then let's see what that sounds like. Because we were trying to use the wireless microphones, Howard. Let me move over to the install one and see if that has a different audio quality. How's that coming through? Is that any better for everybody? So I want to make sure that you can hear us a little bit today. So let's talk about things that we learned, right? This is not going to be as much of a educational episode as we do in the past where we dive into technologies. It's more of a informative discussion on where the industry is going and ways that manufacturers are progressing with technologies, particularly in, hey, Murph, thanks for joining us out in Jersey Shore.
All right, thanks, Howard. I'm glad you can hear that a little bit better. So it'll probably pick up some of the audio noises in the room, but that's all right. Hopefully it's all understandable. And we do have some videos that we're going to be sharing along the way to show some of the technologies that we did see today. So when we look at what's happening in the world of residential and light commercial, we always talk about the A2L transition and how we're moving away from our previous generation of A1 refrigerants like R410A and R22, moving into things like R32 and R454B. But we don't talk about the chillers a whole lot. Now, as we move into chiller technologies, we're going to see a lot of transitions away from like R134A. And so we're going to be looking at what those solutions are for our HFO refrigerants and our HFO HFC blends that will be working in them as well. So let's kind of recap some of the things that we have seen. Right? When we look at what's happening in the world of chillers, we've got a few things going on. Like when we talk about the residential light commercial, and we talk about inverter technology, well, we've been using VFD drives in our industrial sector for a long time. But what we're starting to see a lot more of is like our magnetic bearing compressors, right?
Yeah.
I thought that was very interesting.
The whack-a-mag.
Yeah, and so one of the things that we encountered today, right, for those of you that grew up in the 1970s, 80s, and into the early 90s, probably remember the thing called the whack-a-mole, right? Well, we actually have a thing called the whack-a-mag where we're using a rubber mallet to test the harmonics and the vibrations that can be generated on our magnetic bearing compressors and how we're using technology to manage those magnets to keep the rotors centered with inside of the rotor. Quite interesting technology. So I'm going to see if I can grab any of our videos here and show you a little bit of what we actually seen today. So here's an overview of the facility, right? I'm going to bring this up a little bit to talk about the facility itself. So the JADEC, Johnson Controls Advanced Engineering and Development Center here in New Freedom, Pennsylvania, was designed as a product development and engineering aspect of the entire company. So it's not a manufacturing facility, which is a little bit different than what we've been seeing in the past. You and I have visited some manufacturers in the past.
It looks a little similar.
Yes.
It has many of the same bays and, aisleways for production, but they're not a long line.
Right.
They're small bays for one chiller at a time.
Right, for doing test procedures, right? So in this facility, what we're seeing is that companies like Johnson Controls are investing into the research. They're investing into the development of technologies to make sure that the industry can move forward at the rate of change that we are witnessing. Because technology in general, and the world in general, is progressing at a fairly astronomical rate. And so to make sure that you can keep up with that, manufacturers are having to push the boundaries of innovation, right? We've been manufacturing equipment for decades now. How do you manufacture it better, right? How do we make improvements?
And how do you manufacture something new sooner?
Yes.
Because that's one of the things that we experienced here. And, the learning curve, as you talked about new refrigerants, right? The learning curve on working with new refrigerants, there's a lot of design and test that's required to be able to make sure that that's reliable. And that's the kind of thing we were able to see that they're putting into practice here.
Yeah. So let's take, for instance, when we're looking at, let me go grab another video here. When we're looking at chiller design and testing, one of the things that I thought was absolutely fascinating is the amount of work that goes into the testing of newly designed products. Remember, these generations of chillers are moving to things like 1234 and 1233. We're looking at HFO refrigerants and how they can function. So in this facility, it's not about manufacturing at all. It's about developing products and then testing them in real world applications. So this section is where they actually bring those newly designed systems, updated systems, and put them into full production. They have 10 fully operating chillers that are just used for moving the heat from these units, right? Putting them in actual real world test scenarios. And so if you have any questions along the way, let us know, because we're really here to show you how our industry is progressing and what it takes to stay up to date with all of these technologies and innovations. One of the aspects of JADEC
that really is exciting to see is their training department. So when we start looking at new technologies, we look at innovations in refrigerants. It's one thing to introduce something to the market, but it's another to introduce the training that goes along with it. And that's really why we've been doing our road shows and doing our traveling, so that we can make sure that we find the facilities to keep you educated on these changes. We can only bring you so much over our classroom presentations. So what we witnessed was, at this state-of-the-art facility, we actually have a technical training department where you're taught not only the previous generations of compressors, of their York line of compressors, we're diving into new models, and all of Cutaways all have classroom content. And many educators, when they look at these new technologies, they go, yeah, but I'm not a technician. I don't have access to this type of training anymore. That's not the case here.
Right. In fact, they made it plain to us that not only was it for their own employees, but it was also for those that are out there working on the equipment on a day-to-day basis, so that they could come in, learn the product. And I love the words that were used. It's not just a black box with magic in it, right?
That's true.
That's a direct quote, by the way, from the instructor.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's also look at some of the different types of equipment that's being tested and utilized in this facility. So we had equipment from 35 ton all the way up to 500 tons that were fully functioning pieces of equipment. So we've been to some other training facilities around the country. We had an opportunity to go to the 449, UA 449, to look at some of their technical training on chillers. But the difference of going to a place like JADEC is that you actually see these things in full operation. So in the classroom, you're learning how they're designed. You're actually going through, mechanical specifications. You're learning how to work on them. Then you're going out into the lab. I'll see if I can't get some content up here in a minute on the actual laboratory, where you're completely disassembling, measuring, correcting, and rebuilding the compressors in the classroom. And as part of the tours of the facility, you can actually encounter those pieces of equipment in full operation.
And being in this room with the ability to, as they were joking, hear your own heartbeat, right?
Yeah.
In this sound isolation room, and seeing this live. I made a comment a little bit ago about not being in a production line, but I said small bays. They're not small.
Yeah.
Realize when you see this chiller go out of the door, you get the perspective of how big this room was.
Yeah, 101,000 cubic feet was in this.
So I guess small is perspective.
Yeah. So what we had the opportunity to see, and I wish we had time to put the videos together for you to enjoy today, but it's going to be in a follow-up video. We'll have a bunch of that coming out. We'll be dripping some social content out, showing you some of these. But what you see in this particular shot is one of the isolation rooms where they bring in these chillers. They put them in full function, full operation, to be able to look for harmonics, to be able to isolate the sounds. And they do it in actually two different ways, depending on whether it's an air source chiller or it is a water-cooled chiller, a water source chiller. And what they do is, previously we would looked at, the way that equipment was manufactured for longevity. Now we're starting to focus on efficiency as well as the quietness of them. And so in a product line, we're actually looking for specifications as low as 5 decibels with a maximum of 5 decibel variance between the audio frequencies of pieces of equipment. And so we don't normally think about these large pieces of equipment that we typically see outside that you can hear from a distance that are actually now being re-engineered and redesigned to operate at minimal audio qualities.
And you made a good comment earlier, because one of the things that you said, and I mean, on the floor, one of those things that you said was that, it's not just today about what's happening with, and I'll call it noise pollution, right? We have to be careful as we get closer and closer together and things are moved closer. We need to make sure that we're not creating more noise, right? In addition to other things. So they used to call it noise pollution. We didn't call it that today. But I thought your thought earlier was very astute, that you were like, we need to be more concerned with the amount of volume. We're concerned with our hearing protection. We have to be concerned with the amount of noise that reverberates between buildings and even inside of facilities, right? So it's really important that they're able to not only test this, but set up their equipment to operate within certain parameters, which is just fantastic.
Yeah, so what we're seeing in this portion is some of these larger capacity units that are actually being brought in. So you can imagine, a unit that is 30 or 40 feet long actually being brought into the facility, completely assembled, and then tested for its capacity, for its operating sound levels, and its energy efficiency, all in one location. So it's a different aspect than we typically encounter at manufacturing facilities.
Yeah, and we noticed their gantry cranes, right?
Yeah, I've
It's
seen
like
some 60 ton.
60 ton.
Right.
This part over here in this room, it's a 20 ton. And before you actually showed the little train carts or, that are, have the ability to travel through the different spaces. And you could clearly see that each one of those carts could handle, I think it was 20 or 30 tons each. So now you have 30 ton on this cart, 30 ton on this cart, and just amazing what they can move around them with such ease in this plant.
Yeah, and here's one of them right now. And so, we had the opportunity to see a lot of behind the scenes aspect, but there are tours that are available in the facility, especially for, those that actually purchase and work with these products. So we wanted to be able to bring that to you. We had this wonderful opportunity to work with Godfrey to have private access into the facility to witness what happens in the background, right? And so we don't always get to see this side of our industry.
We got
right?
beyond a tour. we got to go beyond, and it was. I got a comment while this is up, and there are like the American flag at the end of every one of these large rooms, which was really impressive and exciting, and very good feeling to know that we were in a facility that was proudly made in the USA.
Yeah, I agree. Adds a lot of patriotism. A lot of union technicians working in the facility. When we look at chillers, that is one of our primary contractors is our union. But reason we wanted to dive deeper into this, a few weeks ago we did a class with Belimo talking about smart valve technologies that's going into chiller systems because of the demand of cooling capacity in data centers. And the thing that we found today, which is what we want to really deliver as our message for today, was even as a manufacturer, one of their largest demands, their highest demands for product is in the data center market. And so as educators, we have to start looking at our own programs and how we cater our programs to what the customer is demanding. And the market is starting to demand technicians that can understand these technologies. I mean, you think about the growth of data centers and the growth of data in general, it's only going to continue to escalate. So at our own conference, at the National HVACR Education Conference this year, I had the opportunity to talk to education programs that were building out training that is specifically for chiller technicians. And so I wonder for yourself as an educator, if you have even thought about how chiller and chiller technicians are impacting your clientele.
I wonder if a lot of people forget about chillers in the realm of residential products, thinking about their refrigerant transition, thinking about furnaces, thinking about heat pump technology. And sometimes the big commercial and applied products kind of get pushed back and get, short shrift, I think, in our educational world right now, because we're trying so hard to bring people into the workforce in whatever form we can get people in the workforce. And we need to remember the number of jobs that are actually available. And you had I don't want to give away the interview you had today, but you had a great interview today with somebody talking about those opportunities. And I can't wait for that to go live when you show that.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to help us dive a little bit deeper into, what's going to be expected of us as educators going forward. And ways that we can deliver a better product. So it really comes down to delivering a product to the industry. And it was definitely an eye-opening opportunity here. Yeah. Anyone have any comments, any questions about the facility while we're here? So we're probably going to cut it short today. We're probably going to have about a 30-minute or so show. We're actually going to have to get back on the road here in a little while. It's been a long day. We weren't even sure if we were going to do an episode today, but we just love hanging out with you so much. We wanted to make sure that we spent some time to tell you what we're doing. If we're not going to be on live doing a teaching class, why not?
Well, we had an exciting day. We can't share what we had today yet. But the beautiful thing is we put, the opportunity to get online, the opportunity to talk about it, and a little bit of wishful thinking on our part that we could have it out there. I think it's great that we've got some of this footage from a previous visit and from Godfrey, because it's really, this is what we saw today. We, of course, saw more than that, and some we can't even show you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we can even talk about how heat pumps are now moving into the chiller industry.
Yeah.
So when we think about this lineup of products, we learned that one of the new product lines that is in high demand in the chiller industry is our heat pumps. And so heat pumps are now being manufactured, heat pump chillers that are operating in ranges. Their test facility is down to -20 and can actually operate up to 131 degrees Fahrenheit. And the reason they have the low temp chiller test facilities is that we now are seeing a demand for heat pump chillers, right? Replacing gas-fired boilers with chillers that can produce heated water, right? And some of those may still have some backup generated heating supplies as auxiliary heating. But as we move into high efficiency products across all markets, we're going to be introducing heat pumps in a variety of different applications, all the way up into these high capacity chillers.
I'm going to give another one away.
Yeah.
Can't wait till we get to see you in a winter coat today.
Yeah. This place, are you kidding? This place goes down to -20. You think I'm not going to go in there and see what's going on? I have to say, though, the 131 was only 80 when I went in there. So, yeah, it wasn't all as exciting as it could have been. But it was still very interesting.
I saw you in a winter coat today.
Yes, absolutely. And so we'll have a lot of review content where we're going to be looking at their test chambers, their test facilities, using test products all the way up to 100,000 BTUs with 30,000 BTU, 100,000 BTU test functionality. And it really is just showing that our industry is moving forward at an exponential pace. And so the demand on education is following along with that exponential rate.
I think you meant tons, by the way.
I think I did.
You said BTUs.
CFM.
CFM.
30,000
All right,
CFM,
there you
100,000
go.
CFM.
Okay.
That's where I was wrong. Thank you.
Look, we went through so many different categories today.
Yeah. Our brain has just been
CFM and BTU, and yeah, exactly. But that's okay. That's why we're here together, right?
Exactly. So for this week's show, we were on the road. We spent some time with Johnson Controls. You're going to see a lot more of involvement with manufacturers and education going into 2025 because of this, because of the development of new technologies and the whole change in refrigerants. Part of the reason for us to explore all of these heat pump applications, especially in the chiller world, is I'm a very fond believer that we're going to be introducing heat pump chillers not just in these commercial applications, but in residential applications within the next few years. And, we've already seen manufacturers releasing their A1 refrigerant and A2L refrigerant residential air to water chillers. And as we start moving into ultra low GWP refrigerant applications, it's just a matter of time before we start seeing our A3 residential chillers. So as educators, we have to be aware of what these changes are from both from industrial, from commercial, which then will trickle down into the residential applications. So we have to be aware that our industry is going to be looking different in the future.
And aware and willing to jump in with both feet, because it's a change, and we do. It's one of the things we're good at, right? Education is all about changing people's hearts and minds, and that's the beautiful thing about the opportunity we have. We have a great opportunity to help people learn and to learn something new. That's what we do as educators. And as you know, the best educators that we know, and that came up today as well, are those who are lifelong learners. And I know that we can go back to our conference, and you go through the list of all the people that took part in that, and how many of those people are so focused and dedicated on their students. You hear them say, talk about why they're here. They're here because they need to take this stuff back to their students. And that's, again, why are we here? We're here because we need to get this to people so we can open those minds and open those eyes to what's happening outside of their regular world.
Yeah, absolutely. When we were walking through this factory, we seen a lot of A2L stickers on equipment. Yeah. That's primarily what we actually seen was A2L. So we will have a lot of content to be able to share with you on A2L in this environment. Because really what we found was there is no A1 refrigerants left in this facility. Everything has moved over to our A2Ls, whether it is an HFO refrigerant or an HFC HFO blend. I mean, really, primarily, we've seen 513. We've seen 1233 ZD, I think that is.
12, right.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And 3, 4.
Was it EZ? No,
Z. I think that one's a ZE.
ZE.
I'll have to get back on that.
Yeah, I know. Again. And then the 1, 2, 3, 3, like you said.
So just be aware that we're going to see a variety of A2Ls in anything that you work on, preparing us for those next generations. Let me see if I can grab any other video content while we're here. I've uploaded a few of them and just wanted to share some of what we actually seen today, and then we'll be wrapping it up here in just a couple minutes. We really appreciate you joining us. Then we'll be diving deep into this, sharing some of this content as we go forward. And if there are any manufacturing facilities that you would like, any that you have heard about that you'd want to learn more, we want you to let us know. Those will be the type of facilities that we will be begging to get into to give you access, behind the scenes views of what's happening in our world so that we can be prepared for those next steps.
And we apologize to those if we missed you today and you're catching this as a recording. Well, please feel free, follow up, pass that information along. And if you happen to have a contact for somebody who can get us in touch with the right person to get us in a facility, don't be afraid to get back to us. Give us some feedback, give us some input, make sure we find out from you not only who you'd like us to visit, but if you have those connections, please let us know.
All right.
Oh, wow. This was a fun day.
I'm flooded. I don't know about you.
So, well, we appreciate y'all joining us, and we can't wait to actually show you the rest of this, and you're going to get to see some exciting stuff from today's visit.
I completely agree. So thank you all for spending time. I know it wasn't as educational a day as we typically do, and I do apologize for that, but I wanted to spend time with you. This is something that I look forward to every week, hanging out with my community, getting to know you better, and sharing some of our experiences to help make us all better educators and just better members of our industry.
Fantastic. Thank you, Clifton.
Thank you,
Great
sir.
to be with you today.
All right, everyone. Well, I look forward to hearing from you again next week. And next week, we'll dive a little bit deeper into some of these technologies that we see. So everyone have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you next week on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC Show. Bye, everybody.